Hey, high school literacy leaders. This is DLC Foster Yankee, welcoming you back to another episode of Curriculum Chats. In this video, I'll be discussing Section 1, Lesson 4 in the Antigone unit. So let's get started with a look at our goals, TEKS, and ELPs. The goals for this lesson have students synthesizing information from Antigone and the story of Antigone, a play, a text, a myth for all times, to create new understanding using text evidence and original commentary to support an interpretive response about Antigone. They're also analyzing isolated scenes and their contribution to the success of the plot of Antigone as a whole, as well as how Sophocles develops complex yet believable characters through cultural settings and events in Antigone. Two texts for this lesson. Again, students are still reading Antigone, and they'll also read excerpts from the story of Antigone, a play, a text, a myth for all times, which I believe can be found in the unit reader and also under the materials tab. Okay. The materials for this lesson are Antigone character argument note-taking tool, and like I just mentioned, excerpts from the story of Antigone, a play, a text, a myth for all times, and the Section 1 question set. In this lesson, students will read the end of the first section of Antigone and add to their understanding of Creon and Antigone's characters. They will also continue to add to their tools with appropriate textual evidence to scaffold to their culminating text. This lesson picks up right where Lesson 3 left off, with students sharing their notes, annotations, and responses with a partner to the questions they answered at the end of the previous lesson. They'll use the bulleted questions on the screen to guide their discussion. Next, students read along and listen as three students read aloud the parts of the century, Creon, and the leader from lines 281 to 375. They also continue to annotate and add notes to their tools and graphic organizers and answer the guiding questions on the screen for the character argument note-taking tool and the bulleted questions for annotation. Once they have read and annotated the text and updated their tools, students select their best response and the response they are least confident about, then partner with another student and share their responses and text evidence with each other, ensuring they understand each other's claims and counterclaims so they can arrive at conclusions about the characters' perspectives and positions. Per the teaching notes, teachers should decide how they want to call on students to read in parts aloud. So that everyone has a chance to read, they might divide the class up into mini groups of three and have each take a part and read to each other. They should also think about how they want to keep track of progress on the tools and graphic organizers, and consider having students mark their best thinking and writing. Because they're still in the beginning of the play, teachers can safely encourage thinking more than quote unquote correct responses. In a perfect world, students will be watching or enacting the full play rather than reading it. Finally, teachers should consider giving students who struggle to find appropriate text evidence a pre-populated tool or graphic organizer as they listen to the teacher think aloud. In the next activity, students work in small groups to read the chorus's lines 376 through 416. As they read, they'll consider the first two questions on the screen. In their groups, students will paraphrase these lines in a way that makes sense and adds meaning to the interaction among Creon, the century, and the leader. Then they'll discuss the third question at the bottom of the screen. Next, and this is a fun part, students design a performance in the manner of the Greek chorus using their paraphrased lines and decide how they can read together or in parts to make this section of the play come to life. They also consider what movements or rhythms they can use to dramatize this section and add meaning, then practice with lines 376 through 385 to get the feel of reading together with movement to add meaning, thinking back to the video they watched with the modern adaptation of the chorus. After they have practiced, students perform portions of the chorus's hymn for another small group. Groups decide what is important from this ode, referring back to the original lines and explaining to their audience the reasons for their paraphrasing and performance decisions. Finally, the class discusses the question on the screen now that they have performed a section of the play. Per the teaching notes, this hymn from the chorus can be complex, but teachers should allow students to struggle collaboratively through the use of a small group, paraphrasing, and dramatizing it for another small group. When placing students in peer supported groups, consider personalities, strengths, weaknesses, and needs. If time does not allow for dramatizing in real time for each other, teachers should consider using Flipgrid or Nearpod's video. Then, other groups can watch and respond. If English learners are struggling with the language, provide them a copy of the course's hymn with synonyms for some complicated words above the original word. For example, home for hearth or obstacle for impasse. In Activity 3, students review the central question of the unit. To whom or what do we owe our loyalty? By using the following questions on the screen to guide a discussion with a partner or a small group. Then, in their learning logs, they write a one sentence original response that each character would give in response to the central question, using appropriate text evidence from the play. Finally, they write 2 to 3 sentences explaining what they know about the topics from Antigone from section 1. After they have considered and responded in their learning log about the characters and topics on the screen, students work with a partner to create a list of questions that they still have. Per the teaching notes, this section is a good place to stop and make sure all the students' notes, tools, and graphic organizers are complete before they proceed to the section diagnostic. This lesson concludes with students reading the Creon section from the excerpts from The Story of Antigone, a play, a text, a myth for all times, using the guided questions in the following segments to help them understand the text. First, students consider how the information presented in the essay adds to the complexity of Creon. The first paragraph of the excerpt states that Creon must be read in several ways. In their learning log, students write down their answers to the following question on the screen, using appropriate and relevant textual evidence from both the essay excerpt and the play to support their response. Then, in their learning logs, they complete a quick write response to the question. For the teaching notes, students will encounter an additional scholarly text around the ideas in Antigone. This essay has been excerpted, and students will read several excerpts over the course of the unit. A full version can be found on the Materials tabs of the unit. This essay adds depth of understanding to the play, as it still can be staged, performed, and discussed in today's society. The student-facing excerpted version can be accessed in the Materials tab as a PDF text. Teachers might excerpt further if time is an issue. They might also read it aloud if the language and meaning need more clarity. One thing to take into consideration is how they want to hold students accountable for going back to find specific text evidence from section 1 of the play. They might consider, again, working with a small group of students who need extra support. In the classroom in a small group, they can easily formatively assess what students are grasping and missing. Providing a pre-populated tool or graphic organizer is also often helpful for struggling students. So that does conclude lesson 4 for our suggested cub. We have students will know Creon's response to his laws being broken. They'll understand how Creon might have been justified in his response to his laws being broken, and be able to use text evidence and original commentary to support a written interpretive response to the question, how might Creon have been justified in his response to his laws being broken? All right, that's a wrap for section 1, lesson 4. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.